So first of all, let me check the technicalities that we have. We have closed caption. Should you need closed caption, you can actually select that on your screen. And this webinar will be recorded for those who are not able to attend. Welcome to our Leadership Institute for Tomorrow's Vision for Success webinar. If this is your first time, we're excited for you to join us. These webinars are sponsored by the California Community College Chancellor's Office, and they are designed to lift the vision of each of us in the community college system to not only to own our diverse leadership identities and gain some skills for you and insights. And we want you to lean into your own cultural strength, your identity strength, and also hopefully to impact your personal or professional life in your leadership journey. That's our goal. In our business, I always say, is to transform our students' lives for their success. And first, by transforming ourselves. So the California Community College system is the largest higher education system in the world. Can you believe that? We would like to foster your awareness, first of all, and deepen your understanding of our system-wide goals. What are those goals and priorities? And of course, these webinars should also strengthen your own leadership mindset, which is a topic that we discussed last month. Enhance your individual capacities and inspire your aspirations. That's today. And we need diverse, excellent, and justice-minded leaders for our system, for all the community college system, actually. I would like to quickly just run through the vision for success goals of California's community college system, if you don't know them. Let's see. First of all, it's in a 5-year period. We are wanting to increase at least 20% of the number of our California community college students on an annual basis to acquire the AA degrees, the credentials, the certificates, or special skill sets that they come for us to gain and prepare them for an in-demand job. 2 is over the 5-year period, we want to increase 35% the number of California students transferring to the UCs and the CSU systems. And also in a 5-year period, we want to reduce that average number of units accumulated by our students earning the AA degree that may have served as roadblocks, that may have served because they didn't know the pathways clearly. And number 4 is over the 5 years period, we want to increase at least 20% the number of California students annually to acquire the AA degree, the credentials and certificates. Like I said, special skills that they come for us to prepare them. And number 5 is to increase 35% of the number of California transferring, all right? And so these are our list of goals that we have that you see. And we also have the last one is to reduce the regional achievement gaps, reducing achievement gaps. This is a very important goals for the California community colleges. So those goals are certainly posted on the Chancellor's Office website. We hope that you will visit the Chancellor's Office website for a lot more information regarding our vision for success goals. You know, success always takes a village. So collectively and individually, we help each other to grow and to help our students succeed. We can do better by our students. So today's topic is one that I'm very excited about. And it's about from classified professionals to the presidency. First of all, I always start with some questions. I want to ask you who are attending the classified professionals first. Have you ever thought that the presidency is a possibility for you? I wanted you to say yes or no out loud, wherever you are. Yes? I hear some yeses. Okay, if your answer is a quick heck no, I want you to think again, seriously, especially after today's seminar. If your answer is yes, good for you. We'll cheer you on and we'll help you grow into one. And if you're not a classified professional role or a manager role right now, I also want to ask you the same question. That is, when you look at a classified professional colleague, do you perceive that person may be a president one day? If your answer is no, never thought about that, well, I want you to check your implicit biases about that, about classified professionals, because that person may be your future president one day. In fact, you may not have thought about being a president even yourself, and I hope this seminar will also inspire you, inspire everybody. And we are certainly not here to push everyone to be presidents. That's not the idea. The idea is that we're here simply to grow leaders. Let nothing stop you thinking that there's a ceiling above your head simply because whatever role you're wearing, the current chair that you're sitting in, because we want everyone to have that leadership identity. Our panel today are powerful examples, excellent models, and evidence that there is no ceiling for anyone in the community colleges system, regardless of your entry point, your classification, or your beginning educational backgrounds. So let me introduce you to our panel of presidents who have risen from the classical professional staff positions when they enter into the system. First, President Melody Dixon of American River College, and President Vincent Rodriguez of Coastline Community College. And we also have President Rosie Rimando Chansep of South Seattle College. So let me start. President Dixon, let's start with you.
Wonderful.
The question is, can you please give us your personal background and then the highlights of your journey from starting as a classified professional to the presidency today?
Absolutely. And I want to thank the Chancellor's Office for putting this on. It's such an incredible event. And Dean Joe, always a pleasure working with you, and your passion for classified is palpable in this space. So thank you so much. So I welcome all of you today, and I notice that there's almost 200 people in this space eager to learn more and hear about our journeys. And I would say we all have a story. We all have a journey. And I think it's important for us to understand that our personal experiences drive our leadership styles, approaches, and outcomes. And so I want you all to remember that as I walk through my leadership journey with you today. I think it's imperative to share with you all a little bit before we start on this timeline, my educational background. So I'll take just a couple of seconds to share that I am a product of the community college 3 times over. I went as a pre-K student when my mom was in her career to technical education program. I returned as a GED student, so a general education diploma in the community college system, and then again as an associate for transfer student. So I am proud of the community college system. I am proud of the educational system and the opportunities it can provide for people that come from backgrounds like my own, where leadership isn't necessarily something you see yourselves as, and something that you actually don't necessarily believe is attainable. And I share with you today that your leadership has already begun. And so as Dean Joe said, looking at yourselves and your peers and what you aspire for yourselves professionally is really important. It's important to dream as we ask of our students. So with that being said, I'd like to walk you a little bit through my timeline. And that timeline begins as I entered the educational system as a classified professional. But prior to that, I was a professional student as a director of legislative affairs, rallying other students to challenge legislation that impacted the cost of education. I was administrative assistant in the mathematics and language arts department, supporting our students and our faculty and the managers in that area. I also work in the Career Center, serving students, setting them up for internships, helping them explore their interest and potentially determine pathways as it relates to majors. And then I entered the educational institution as a classified professional, as you'll see here, as the assistant director for diversity recruitment at Portland State University. This particular opportunity came to me as a graduate student, and I was tapped to consider this particular role, one that I had never considered myself for. I was immersed in education and hadn't even thought about the career trajectory or opportunities that would be availed to me, or opportunities that I could access, even within my own institution of study. And so I worked in that particular role for about 1.5 years, traveling around the United States and different recruitment areas, recruiting students, sharing what our university had to offer, and in particularly in communities of color, which is really exciting to me because as a student who was transformed by classified professionals, it was really, really important for me to also give that back to other students, not only in my community, but around the states. I have a tendency to root for the underdog because that is my lived experience. And so my next role was the first of its kind at Portland State University, which I helped develop, which is a coordinator of African American support services. And it allowed me to build a Men of Color program. It allowed me to build a Celebrating Sisters program, a scholarship program, a first-year program for our African American students, or those that I identified as wanting to learn about the African American experience. It was quite a rewarding role and such an essential role to those students' experiences. So I want to keep inserting here the power that classified individuals and professionals have to transform the lives of students, to transform the lives of their peers, and certainly to impact our community, faculty, and educational institutions in very profound ways. Sometimes as classified professionals, we don't know that. We don't know what that impact is. So I hope that you feel that today and here in our journeys. I moved on from there to really get immersed into the retention portion of the house. I understood that students would come. If you had resources, students would come. But what I learned, not only as a student, but as a professional, that it was important to keep students. It was important to help them cross the finish line and see the potential in themselves and the impact that they could have on others. And so with that, I went into supporting multicultural and diversity programs at the university. I then moved from there into supporting a scholarship program that served about 350 students at Portland State University that came from underserved backgrounds. And as a classified professional, I felt like I learned at an educational institution. I was employed at an educational institution that I studied, and I wanted to know if my skills would transcend that institution. And so it's important to be courageous. It's important to take leaps, even when you're not sure that that's the right pathway or the journey for you. And so I elected to apply for a position out of state. And that position was in the Los Rios Community College District at Folsom Lake College as the Dean of Student Services. And it is an incredible opportunity to come into the system at a time when the Student Success Act was being implemented and the Student Success and Support Programs and equity work was getting underway. Very much connected to my passion and work, and very much skills that I had developed that I could actually bring to this particular college. I evolved from there to developing programs as a dean and working with faculty members and wonderful classified professionals like you. And the creativity and the innovation that classified professionals bring as individuals that firsthand touch our students is really imperative for any educational institution to truly be intentional in the services and supports that we provide. So don't underestimate your contribution. I moved on from there and had the opportunity to serve in an interim role as a vice president. And you'll see the remainder of my trajectory in the next 3 roles is vice president's positions, one of a permanent stature at Folsom Lake College, and then moved to the district office to try to have a broader reach, right? That's a very scary prospect when you don't see yourself as an administrator, right? A GED recipient. And so with that being said, I took that leap. And I was a professional, as many of you may be, that really is a person that wants to fill gaps. Where do gaps exist? A part of that was my lack of planning as a young professional of the direction that I wanted to head. And so what I wanted to do was be a problem solver. I wanted to be a change agent. And so with that, where a need arose and folks asked me to step up, I stepped up. And I stepped into it and leaned into very scary opportunities with courage and pride in being able to help others. So with that, I took on an interim role at also SCC, Sacramento City College, the Panthers, and did some incredible work there with the student services area, working with wonderful classified professionals that was engaged in transformation work. Right? So revamping how we think about outreach and providing support. And I can assure you that many of those individuals that I rub paths with are true leaders and will ascend to the highest levels they choose. As they begin to build their networks, we continue to develop those skills. And so I hope that you all will engage in those as you are today to continue to develop your skills and build your network. I had the great luxury from there to take on an associate vice chancellor position. And I'll be honest with all of you today, at risk of this being recorded and shared broadly, I didn't even really know what an vice chancellor role was. I could read the job description, but hadn't seen that role in action in a very impactful way. And so with that being said, I learned that job on the job. And so for you all that are fearful of taking opportunities until you understand something inside and out, take the leap. There is value in learning things on the job and making it your own. And then lastly, I moved from that particular position into the role that I am. I feel very fortunate that the leadership saw the talent in me as an individual who is yet to acquire a doctorate degree, which is not the norm. But my work ethic, my commitment, my belief in being a change agent and a public servant is what allowed me to ascend to this place. So for those of you that have those skills and characteristics, please know that the world is your oyster and you can be what you want to be. You just need to make sure that you build a network to get there. So with that, Dean Joe, I will turn it over to you for our, one of my fellow panelists to share their journey.
Thank you very much. Take the leap and you don't have to check every box to get to the next job. OJT. I've learned my jobs too, OJT, all the way through. So thank you for having those courage. All right, let's move to President Rodriguez.
Good morning. So I look forward to telling my story, and I'm going to take the baton that was just passed to me. Some people had a belief in me. They had trust in me and gave me some opportunities based on that trust that was provided. So for me, my journey starts in community colleges. I'm a product of the California community college system, but it wasn't until just a few minutes ago I was starting to think about, I was actually at a community college when I was still in high school. When I was 16 years old, I was studying computers. So this would have been in the late 1970s. Maybe right around 1979 or 80. And we only had, the only computer we had was a terminal that connected to Santa Ana College by wire. And then there were 2 computers. One was a CRT and the other one looked like a typewriter. And at night, my dad was going to Santa Ana College to work on a business certificate. And so I would go with him. And when he would go to class, I'd go in the library. So as a 16-year-old kid, I'd go to the library, which is where their computer center was. And that's where I got extra computing time. So that was my first exposure to the community college system. Later on, right out of high school, I went to Orange Coast College, did well there initially, transferred to Cal State Fullerton without completing my AA degree, and life got in the way. So I didn't succeed the first time I tried education. Life got in the way. I was getting married at a young age, took on too much. And so I left college and started working. And I was always finding myself smart enough to get a decent job. I used to work just down the street here in Fountain Valley at Fountain Bowl Bowling Center. And after 9 years, I was out of job and I was looking for a new job. And so in doing so, I found my way to Coastline College. And that's where my career started as a classified employee. I started as a testing technician at Coastline College. And I remember being interviewed and the dean showing me around. I said, well, where's the testing center? He goes, no, everything's at a distance. You're going to take over one of our campuses on the weekends when all the students come in, and thousands of students are going to be tested, and you and staff are going to work on that. So I learned that right away. Quickly, they saw some potential in me. The dean that hired me saw some potential, let me be the lead. Next thing I know, I was reorged into an operational specialist position, then a director of distance learning, because I was able to organize things and find solutions to better ways that we could do our instruction. And we were changing from the television-based instruction that the college was started on to online. So I did the first online testing program that we had available in a system, so the instructors didn't have to do all of the work on that. We would do it for the instructors and help the students if they had any problems so that they could take their tests online. But at that point, the dean came to me and said, Vince, you know, me and the president have been supportive. We've moved you along to different positions. You can't move any farther without getting a degree because you have not completed any degrees. So that was around the time that I went back to school, started working on a degree. The president of the college had changed by that time. And I remember the president of the college make an announcement saying that if anyone would like to come for an open hour to meet with me, please come and let's talk and tell me, I get to learn about them and vice versa. So I went, and the president met with me, and I explained to them, well, I'm going back to school. I'm looking for opportunities so I can continue to grow because I know I can't move any higher up in the institution without that. They were very supportive. And I got to say, for everyone that knows, my president at that time was Dr. Ding Jo Curry that's here. So as I tell the stories, it's because she actually was there at the time helping me out. So I went back to school, got my degree, and then I applied for one of the positions as a dean, but because I got my bachelor's degree in information technology, which helped me in that time, that wasn't going to qualify me for other positions. So I remember telling Dr. Curry, okay, I finished my IT degree. That helps me in my role on an everyday basis. It's really helping me, great return on investment for me in my role. She says, great, now go back for your master's. And so when I went for my master's degree, I took about 2 months off and I went back and I started thinking, if I'm going to continue to advance in a community college in an academic environment where faculty members play such a critical role, what is the degree that's actually going to help me work with them? Since I knew I was never going to be a full-time teacher. And so when I went for my master's, I went for a master's in education with an emphasis in distance learning and adult ed. And I figured if I could learn the practical side, the theory side, all of that formal education to go with working with the faculty, that might help me to be able to have discussions with faculty and have those discussions and support them. So I did. I completed my degree, and shortly after completing the degree, then I got an opportunity. I was given an opportunity to be an interim dean. We had a vacancy that came up while we're going through the hiring process. Vince, will you be the dean for 6 months at one of our sites? So I was the dean out at one of our centers that had our arts and our science and so forth. So I said, absolutely. And so the take on it was, you can do this. You won't be able to apply for the permanent position, but you get a lot of experience. And so I took that. And for me, that was an opportunity that was thrown my way. And I had an opportunity to do that. I also had an opportunity to work part-time as an instructor in business computing, teaching computer classes. And I remember after going through that 6 months, we hired a dean. I came back to work in our distance learning department, and the vice president said, Vince, don't worry. Next time you get into dean position, you'll be able to apply and get in the formal position. You don't have to do an interim. Well, about a month later, she says, I have an emergency. The dean in one of our areas just left, effective on Monday next week. Will you please do this for me? So I went out to be the dean over our career education area. And I also had an opportunity to be an interim dean over our education, our English and humanities area. So I had all of these opportunities that came to me. It was in areas that I wasn't familiar with, but I got to know all the faculty in those areas and got to serve them along the way. And that helped me tremendously to become very experienced. And as a result of that, that ended up with an opportunity for me to become a dean for our distance learning department. So all these interims gave me opportunities. So I'd say for you to look for those opportunities. I remember another time when I was sitting in my office as the dean, I think it was a little after 5 o'clock, and I get a phone call asking me to come to the president's office. I go, wow, that's odd at this time. So I get there and I got a message saying from Dr. Curry, our former chancellor, Bill Vega, was just here. They got a new program at Cal State Long Beach where they're looking for people to complete their EDD program. And we think you might be great for that. If you want to, let me know and I'll help support you with the letter. And I went home and thought about it for a long time. I thought that would be a great opportunity. So then I joined the EDD program at Cal State Long Beach, which prepared me for the vice president position, which I was able to get a few years later. All along the way, though, here's the story for me is people gave me opportunities. They threw it out there. They didn't force me to go there. And I had a choice to accept that new position or not. And I did. I accepted the opportunity and I learned from each of them. But all along the way, what I focused on is how could I be the best for each of these positions. I never looked beyond that next step up above, but I did in the back of my mind think, if I do have a longer career here, what would help me along the way? And so then all of this timeline led me to the point of opportunity to be a president here at Coastline. The other thing I did along the way was learn about the past, recognizing the past. In fact, I was just writing an email last night that's in my outbox to the initial president, who I think it might even be on this line today, of honoring some of the things that were the legacy from the very first president, and understanding the myths, the legend, the symbols, the icons, and so forth. So I learned along the way to be the best I could at my job and always look, well, what might be that next one? And I followed the breadcrumbs that were laid out for me to that next position. And so I'd encourage you to look for those breadcrumbs also.
Thank you. My goodness. I have to say, Vince, that when I met you first, you had a different color. And then also when I met you, you did not have that bachelor degree, as you said. So many classified professionals were in your position, and your story indeed is an inspiration. And being a homegrown president is not an easy thing. That's a huge statement about you as a person, the characteristics that you have, and the leadership capacity that everybody have seen you grow up in the system and trust you that much. So congratulations and thank you for that story. All right. Now we're going to turn to our president, Raimondo Charansap. Tell us about your journey.
Thank you, Dr. Curry. And I have to start by saying I'm honored to be invited to talk to the California Community College system. I am, my name is Rosie Raimondo Charansap. I serve as the president at South Seattle College. I have been in the Washington system my entire career. So I've, unlike my panel mates, I've not worked in the California system, but we certainly experience a lot of parallels in the way our systems operate up here in Washington. I think like President Dixon, I also took a lot of leaps throughout my career. I'll walk you through it a bit on the chart here, but and also like President Rodriguez, I also was approached with opportunities or possibilities and sort of went into them without a real clear sense of, okay, I'm going to do this, and then that's going to get me there, and then that's going to get me there. And so what I instead chose to do throughout my career was to really think in terms of what's the work that I could do that I would feel good about doing every day I went home, what resonated with me personally and professionally with my values, and what type of work did I want to do where I could feel like I was having the most impact, or the type of impact that I wanted to have at least. And so that evolved, of course, over time. But I think that my career path really demonstrates how you can stay aligned with your values, and develop the skills along the way to further what you can do while remaining aligned in your values. And so my career started as a classified staff, first in the TRIO programs after I had graduated with my bachelor's degree from college. So for all you TRIO folk out there, you too can be on the path to a presidency, because I started out in TRIO programs first in the summers as a TA and as a summer instructor, working with Upward Bound students. My first full-time job was after I decided that I wasn't going to stick with the was initially getting certificated for K-12 education, but I had discovered this world of community colleges where I could have one foot in the high schools having impact with the pre-college TRIO population, but another foot in higher ed, in this world that was really dedicated, whose mission was really dedicated to creating access and reaching underserved populations in the language that we used at the time. And so I worked the first several years of my career in TRIO in talent search and in Upward Bound. And I will always say, anybody who's ever worked in TRIO before, once you work in TRIO, you're forever, it's in your heart. And so I'm TRIO forever, TRIO works. I think that my work at the time as a classified staff initially, and then as I moved into other roles, into other classifications, I think I was most impacted and I learned the most from my classified colleagues. So Angie Hayden, she was the program coordinator for Upward Bound and Talent Search at South Seattle College at the time. And she taught me the ropes. She helped me learn the basics of my own job. She helped me learn how TRIO, how the Edgar rules work, allowable and unallowable costs, what we had to do for APRs. I mean, of course, I had great other colleagues to learn from, but Angie was the most impactful in helping me really develop some professional skills that would really serve me later in my career. So after I had several years working in TRIO as a learning specialist, student success specialist, I'm not sure what the titles are that are used in the California systems, that was the environment in which I really felt encouraged and empowered to pursue a master's degree. And so I was working during the day, working in the high schools with the pre-college TRIO populations. And in the evenings, I was attending University of Washington and took about 3.5 years to earn my master's in public administration. I really enjoyed that as a particular degree field because I had done my undergraduate in education. The MPA, the Public Affairs program, gave me exposure into understanding other nonprofit and government or public work. And that really helped expand my understanding of how government and nonprofit and other systems come together to serve the people of our communities. And I really enjoyed that as a degree pathway for me. After that, because I had this experience working in high schools and with our local high school population, which in South Seattle College is really a predominantly students of color or communities of color in our neighborhoods, I was encouraged to apply for a director of high school outreach position. And this was a role that I applied into it. I successfully served in that role for several years. And again, this is a role where I succeeded because of the classified colleagues I worked with. A lot of my career, and this is a part of my advice that I'd say for later, the next question, but part of my career was really built on relationships, the importance of building connections and relationships with people. And when I was working in student outreach and trying to recruit people to the college, trying to put on programs that attracted students to the college, I had to get to know not only all the instructional programs, so I could speak about them if I were doing tours or visiting high schools. And so I learned everything from our Prof Tech programs in aviation to our transfer degree programs to our GED at the time and ESL programs. And I had to get to know all the student services functions. I was a student services employee and working in that division in this role, but I also had to understand how financial aid works, how registration and admissions works, when the handoff to advising happens, what services our counselors offered. So this role really gave me a chance to learn the college soup to nuts, everything from that a student experiences from the aspect of how they get into the college and then how they take care of the business of being a college student, to what programs we offered, what benefit they had to the workforce, how to talk to students about the variety of programs that we offered. And then an important other part, and this is where I know we have a lot of our classified colleagues, is I also had to, it was a chance to really learn about the administrative services areas of the college. I mean, trying to figure out how to process contracts and budgets to get pipe and drape rentals for an outreach event, or connecting with the custodian, our custodial team to help set up for an event that I was having to plan, or working with the folks in the catering kitchen. So throughout my career at this point, I have really learned from and relied on and succeeded alongside other classified colleagues, even as I moved into other classifications as exempt at the college. And so I really think about this time as where I really developed a deep expertise in the college. So for any of you who also work in outreach or recruitment or any of these types of programs where you help students figure out how to navigate the college, you are also becoming really, really strong generalists in what it takes to understand the different operations across the colleges. So after this role, I was a part of an effort at our college with a previous VP to write for what would become one of the first Anna Peasy grants. And Anna Peasy, I know many colleges in California, community colleges in California have Anna Peasy grants as well. South was among one of the first 6 back in 2008. And this was where I was sitting in a room in a meeting with the VP and a couple of other leaders from across the college. They were thinking about, well, who should we write into this grant to lead some of this work? And there's a person at this other college that I think we could recruit over, who I think might really be good at this project director role, where you plan different types of programming and implement them using the funds and the direction of the grant. And I raised my hand in this meeting and said, actually, I think I would love to do that job. And I think I could really be successful at it. And it was that moment of bravery that I think President Dixon was talking about earlier, where I sort of stuck my neck out there and said, raised my hand and said, hey, I think I would be really good at this. And the VP took me seriously. He thought back on, and there was another colleague in the room who said, oh yeah, you've got this going, you've done this, you've had this experience, who helped affirm me in that moment. And so later we successfully got the grant, and that started a period of my career where I worked as a project lead or a director on the Anna Peasy grant, and then also that led to some work in a lead role for a Title III grant, a Strengthening Institutions Project grant for our college as well. And so this experience in the grant started to give me more of the administrative leadership experience. So where I developed a heart and an affection and a dedication and a passion around who our students are through my TRIO work, I developed a head for the knowledge of the college through my work as in outreach. This grant work would start to introduce me and give me a sense of my own leadership capability, but also really ignited in me a real strong desire and passion to be a part of positive change work for the college, to not accept status quo, to build and find things that can be rebuilt better, to be more equitable and be more inclusive. And so that work eventually led to me serving as an associate dean over advising related to some of the grant work I was doing at the time. And then eventually, it's not on the screen, but I spent 7.5 years as the VP of Student Services as well, before coming into the role of the presidency when my former president had retired a few years earlier than we had all imagined. So I know I'm sort of shorting the end of this part of my career here, but I wanted to really illustrate how these early experiences as a classified staff with classified colleagues really built up my knowledge and the skill set that I didn't even know I was going to need in the roles into the future. So at most points along that chart, I would have never told you I wanted to aspire to become a president. I was thoroughly happy serving students in TRIO. And then I loved my job working in outreach. And then I was really enjoying this new world of grant work, and then I thought I would be a VP for decades and retire from that role. So, I just want to add to that narrative of don't be afraid to let yourself be surprised along the way with the opportunities that present themselves to you, or that kind of, even if they don't present themselves to you, that you identify along the way. And And I think let your imagination broaden as you think about the skills that you have, the ways that you want to have impact, and the career that you want to build. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Curry for the rest of the panel.
Thank you. Again, I see this theme emerging in terms of you started at the peripheral soft money, right? TRIO programs. And like Vince was, oh, distance learning back then in 70s is like, oh, it's peripheral. And then moving into the center of the college. And the one point I wanted to highlight is that the leaders oftentimes are asking, I wonder who can, right? Blank, who can do so, and you are the ones who are bold enough, right? Yeah, let me just go ahead and try. So that is wonderful spirit. Thank you for sharing that. I want to quickly move to our second question. Maybe you can incorporate some of the question that I have just received is about doubts not being wearing a faculty role. And that is to our participants who are currently working as classified professionals in various roles. Can you provide some advice on what they can do to advance themselves in the community college system? And for those who are actually, not everybody here I know are classified professionals. So I want you to also to speak to them that if they are currently supervising classified professionals, how can they at the same time support the upward mobility of their classified professionals and not dismiss them? Let me start with, in the reverse maybe, let's stay with you, President Ramado Charantsep.
Great. Thank you. Well, some of that advice I sort of jumped to at the end of my remarks, but I can't underscore the importance of connection and relationship building throughout your career. Both Washington and California are system states, strong systems. And, you can see, I think what I once thought was unusual, and then I hopped on a panel here with President Rodriguez. We both have 20 plus years in our institutions, which is rare, but also many of us, many of our colleagues, you move around the system as your career grows. And I think as you do that, so many of us stay in the same systems, or maybe might come from the Washington system down to the California system, back up to Washington sometimes. But those connections that you make along the way are so important, because as I think it was Dr. Curry said at the beginning, is you never know who that you're working with in a certain project role or in a certain position may become a president or a person of influence in an area that you might want to go to in the future, or when you might be in that role and can remember some of these important connections and people that you've known throughout your path. I think especially as we think about how we diversify and bring more folks of color into leadership roles, those connections are incredibly important, because we are needing to develop strong networks in the same way that others have been able to build their careers before us, before these roles were diversified. And so these connections, especially among communities of color, are really critical for diversifying these roles. And we know that it's true in Washington too, that our classified colleague ranks are the most, hands down, the most diverse ranks of our colleagues, employee colleagues in the systems. So I think that importance of building connections, maintaining bridges, trying not to burn bridges. I mean, that's just good career advice in general, but because we work in these really tight-knit systems, those connections are incredibly important. And I think as I was sharing earlier, let your imagination grow with your role. You don't have to have a plan, a 10-year, a 30-year plan for where you're going to end up. I certainly did not, like President Dixon shared as well, but those opportunities revealed themselves to me along the way, and I evolved my thinking, my own self-concept, to keep pace with the opportunity that were around me and the ways that I wanted to really have impact on students. And to the question that was in the chat from Sarah about not having that faculty experience. And I think that one thing that I think is remarkable about us, but I would say we're becoming less remarkable, at least as I look at the backgrounds of the presidents that are coming through in Washington, is that we represent what would be considered a non-traditional route to the presidency. I mean, coming out of student services, out of multicultural affairs, out of instructional support versus as a traditional faculty to dean to VPI to president route. So I think that more and more you're seeing, or less and less you're seeing that traditional route pursued. And yet it is still important to, because we are not coming necessarily with faculty roots, to develop those connections and understanding of the faculty world, so that when you're applying for presidencies, even when you're applying for VP levels or others at the executive leadership level, that you are conversant and fluent in how to relate with faculty and connect to the faculty world. And so I think being able to, and I was able to do that through my roles, through the connections I made with faculty. I talked mostly about connections I made with classified in these remarks, but those same connections with faculty members throughout my career were important for helping me to understand and empathize and really be able to speak to the connection that needs to happen between faculty and leadership.
Thank you. Move quickly to President Dixon.
Yeah, I'll just echo what was shared by my colleague. I see some ARC classified out there, so I feel compelled to also give a shout out to the classified professionals at my college in attendance. But I would say in a couple of bullet points, some considerations. The relational piece cannot be understated. My grandmother used to tell me, people don't remember always what you say, but they always remember how you make them feel. And so that's important for us to understand. I think it's always understanding that you need to be well-rounded. And so you've heard this theme of generalist. You've heard this theme of trajectory on student services and not a faculty-rich background. I've taught courses. I've been in instruction as a teacher. That just wasn't where I had the greatest impact at the time. So you still want to expose yourself. President Rodriguez talked about education being rooted in understanding that realm, right? So however you acquire those skills, it may not be your lived experience or trajectory as a professional, but you can still access knowledge in those areas through relationships, through education, and other means such as professional development opportunities like this. And the last piece I want to say, Dr. Curry, that I think you highlighted is for managers or those working with classified professionals. I don't want that to get lost, because as a college president right now, our goal and focus over this next academic year and over the year that we've just came out of is elevating the classified voice, right? Our classified professionals know tremendous amounts about our college, our communities, and our students. And so being able to elevate that voice to inform who we are and how we evolve is imperative. So investing in professional development opportunities is incredibly important for institutional leadership. Creating similar or parity between the professional development opportunities our faculty get. You can have a strong faculty base, but if your classified aren't being developed in the same way, you diminish the opportunities of your institution. So with that, I will pause there and allow my other colleague to share. But thank you so much for the panelists for the great comments. Really great insight.
All right, President Rodriguez.
Well, thank you. As said earlier, make sure you have a broader vision of the college, and wherever you can learn more and more about the college and you can really understand the different aspects are going to help you. If you already have your degrees, that doesn't mean you have to go back and get a degree in education or an EDD if you already have a PhD or something somewhere else. But if you learn more about the college and do that, that'll help you. For me, the master's in education was a big help so that I could talk about teaching and learning. And then the EDD, for me, Cal State Long Beach is where I went, but between Cal State Long Beach and Cal State Fullerton, I know they do a lot to prepare us. I never realized how much I was going to learn in those EDD programs and prepare me for being a vice president and a president of the college until I went through them. So I'd encourage you to search those out if you don't already have a doctorate, because they are very helpful. And I know there were a lot of case studies to help prepare us for things that I've been dealing with on the first week I was in my role as the president. Secondly, for me, one of the things is the idea of how do I work with faculty when I haven't been a full-time faculty member. There's two things for me. First off, I always embrace servant leadership. That as an administrator, I'm here to provide that help so that they can help the students. And secondly, I learned from someone is I try to avoid telling them what the answer is and what we should do and how we should do it. I do more about asking questions that guide us to the answer. And I watched that through some of the presidents I worked with, where after it was all said and done and we did something, I realized, oh, that's the exact same thing that was done at this other college. And they happened to even work there, but they didn't tell us that's where we're going. They asked questions. And if you ask the right questions, usually you can help to get everyone in the direction you need to go. So the bottom line is, as you learn that. Lastly, one of the things that people come to me often about is say, Vince, I have a degree in this and I'm working in this office, but I want to start working somewhere else. How do I get them to know that? And for me is talk to your supervisor, now talk to me as the president and let me know. And we will look for opportunities to give you those chances. The one that's always hard is the administrative assistants. Too often they see that as an end point and that you don't have other opportunities, but we have a lot of education assistants that have master's degrees and want to be more involved. So for me, I'm looking to the managers, give them other opportunities, but you got to also let people know you're open to those different opportunities.
Oh, goodness, thank you. We have a little bit of time, so it's wonderful. I see some questions and I tried to answer some of them as you were talking, but in fear of lack of time. So one is that this is, I think, is a common feeling about feeling stuck in the position that you're in and not able to move anywhere. Can any of you address that? Okay.
I may. I was thinking of it as I was driving in today. Many of our community colleges in California are experiencing the same thing. We have enrollment declines, and as enrollment is declining, many of the colleges are afraid to hire new people or fill new vacancies. As a result, there are a lot of opportunities. Every week we meet with our cabinet here and talk about, we have a vacancy somewhere. We can't go out and replace that right now. Is there someone else around the college that can help us in that area? So this is a great opportunity to be able to help temporarily in different areas of the college. So I think that'd be one thing to consider.
Great. Any others, President Dixon, or anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think if you feel stuck, one of the maybe shortcomings of our system is we become too specialized in how we hire and deploy our employees to serve our students in community and college. And so I think with the work ahead of us is to really move into what you've seen as this theme, generalist, allow people to acquire many skills, and those skills allow them to move through different trajectories. So one of the things that we're talking about at our college as an executive team and amongst our district are opportunities to do just that. How do we remove ceilings that we inadvertently place on folks by narrowly creating a narrow scope of their job description? Because sometimes our hiring committees are not equipped to understand transferable skills. And so that's other work that we need to do with our hiring committees, is to understand how skills are transferable. And just because my title doesn't look like it is a natural progression here, my experience says that I'm a natural progression. And then there was a question in the chat around looking at years of experiences versus degrees. And I think many colleges are engaging in that discussion to be able to honor the experiences, hand-on output in collaboration with the educational piece. And so that'll be a district by district conversation, but I know that those are occurring across the California community college system.
Okay, let me see if I see some other questions. And one of the is also a common feeling of being stuck with a particular supervisor. And sometimes that is not a supervisor or boss who recognizes your talent, appreciate what you bring. And also a supervisor who, according to this question, who want to be managers and not leaders. So what happens when you have one of those supervisors?
It's a recipe for disaster. So yeah, I mean, and a lot of times I think that comes from those individuals not having the professional development they need to lean in ways in which don't necessarily translate to their employees as support or leadership or a vested interest of development. So I think it's usually a sign that those individuals have been deprived of professional development opportunities that allow them to evolve in their role. So the solution would be creating those opportunities.
Okay, sounds like we need a webinar on how to manage your boss, right? Okay, future topics. Oh, we're coming to the final 5 minutes, so I want to give each of you an opportunity to give us some insights or challenge you want to give people. Let's start with, how about President Romano Clarenchum?
Great, thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation. I think a challenge that I'll issue for the group is to think about how connections with others can help scaffold you and others to grow. So, one of the questions to the chat, one of the answers to that I provided to one of the questions in the chat about that being stuck is, if you're feeling stuck, talk to somebody else that you trust, that you have a good relationship with, probably in your institution, who can see you and the work that you do, to have a conversation at that time and see. Because one of the things that I've experienced when I've had that is having a conversation with somebody that I told them, give me your honest feedback. And they told me things that I couldn't see about myself. And when I was able to be vulnerable with them and let them know that I really did want them to be honest with me, and that it would help me, they gave me good feedback about things that I couldn't see, but helped me understand how I could navigate my way around that feeling of stuckness, because we're inventing words today. And it really, for me, comes back to the importance of those relationships and connections. Use your relationships, connections, your network with one another to lift each other up, and use it as a way to help you grow. Because if you're starting to feel stuck with a manager who doesn't want to be a leader, with a position that isn't bringing you joy anymore, remember that your world isn't only that unit that you work in and the department that you work in, that it is broader than that, and your connections are broader than that, and that you've got these other ways to grow that are around you. And sometimes it just takes a friend to say, hey, this is opening, you should apply for it, because I know you're not really happy where you're at. And that can help open doors for you in ways that you didn't realize were closed to you by that feeling of stuckness. So thank you again.
Thank you. How about President Rodriguez? Word of wisdom.
A couple of things that we've touched on is let people know that you're interested in new challenges and opportunities. Let the president know, let the other people, even if your supervisor isn't embracing it, let others know, and they will help you to find those opportunities. I also benefited a lot from lots of professional development opportunities that came my way, but at the same time, while you're taking those professional development opportunities, you need to make sure you're doing the best job you can for the current job you have. Sometimes people have such a vision for where they want to go, they're not taking care of the business at hand of what they're currently doing. And if you're not doing a good job in the current job, you're not going to get those opportunities down the road. So let people know you're interested in it, take the professional development, but keep focusing on what you're currently doing and build relationships. For me, I'm very relationship oriented, and that has helped me along the way. So I leverage that in my daily life.
Thank you. And President Dixon.
I know we're coming to time, so I would just say relationships, be self-reflective. If you're getting the same response from your colleagues or your supervisors or those around you, there's probably something that you might need to reflect and make some changes on. And then I would just add to President Rodriguez's statement of, are you running to or are you running from? If you're running from, you don't show up as the right product for people in an interview process or on the job. If you're running to, then it means you have a clear focus, you have something to give, and people will notice that just by nature of your hard work. So thank you so much for the opportunity to join the panel today.
Thank you. Thank all of you. And if you were listening and thinking that, oh goodness, I didn't take enough notes, this session is recorded. You will be able to review what they have said, and they said a lot and shared a lot of wisdom today. So I want to thank you again, and I want to thank those of you who have participated in today's LIFTS webinar that is sponsored by the California Community College Chancellor's Office. Don't miss our next webinar that's scheduled on September 24th at the same time. And the topic is a very important one. And what just was said about relationship. And the topic is secret of excellent mentor-mentee relationship. If you're thinking, I don't even have a mentor, that's especially you need to come and join us. And we look forward to having you. And we hope that you have learned insights about your career path, learn some advancement opportunity ways or pathways, and that you are also inspired about your own career advancement. And we ask, last thing to ask of you is to please to give us feedback. You'll receive a survey website that will be linked to the Zoom today, and that I see that Myra has already put the link there. We really ask for you to just take a couple of minutes to give us feedback so that we can serve you better. With that, thank you very much, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Thank you again to our presidents. Bye-bye.